2 years ago, after I was being interviewed at the Getty, and afterwards, this blonde woman came up to me.
I started to lose my nerve. I started to chicken out. How dare I approach, Judy Chicago with this crazy, silly idea. And my friend that was with me, Gail, turned out to be the webmaster for this project. She said, I did not drive with you all the way to the Getty to have you chicken out. And she literally, physically pushed me down that aisle.
And sort of shoved a packet of information and said, do you know what the Pomona Arts Colony is? And I'm like, no, I actually don't.
And I asked her if she could take some time to look at it, and then perhaps we could have a conversation via email. I told her I had a very vague, harebrained idea, and her response was, you're right. This is very vague and very harebrained. What are you thinking about?
I have a long-standing interest in art reconnecting to community and being more important in the world than it presently is. And so there seemed to be a lot of interface between the needs of the community here and what Donald and I could offer. And I think it was that at that time we came up with the idea of doing a project about the future, envisioning the future. Although I've spent most of my life in my studio, I have over the years taught from time to time, and I've always brought a particular approach to my teaching involving empowering the people that I worked with. But I always worked directly with the participants, which is what Donald and I also did when we taught together in Kentucky. So this was the first time that we ever tried to teach the teachers, that is, to translate our way of working with artists to other people and then guide them to try and see whether or not this methodology actually can be translated.
We received hundreds of applications from artists and students from all over Southern California of diverse nationalities, of incredible talent, from which we chose the pool of participants and facilitators for the project. And I think the quality of excellence is going to be exhibited in what you see in the exhibitions. We put together a 2-weekend lecture series bringing people from all over the world to talk about issues of envisioning the future of globalization, of utopia. It was a way of informing the participants and the facilitators about the subject of envisioning the future and gave them a basis from which to work on their art.
The project of envisioning the future is best left to those people with vision, and those people tend to be artists. After all, the task of imagining an ideal societal future as well has been one of the dominant recurring motifs of art and of modernism.
We're more than just the producers of pretty things. We engage in a discourse that's abstract, that's not in that painting, but which captures certain important aspects.
We look for the artists who have stood as a beacon of social justice and of moral sensitivity, and we're extraordinarily fortunate, I might add, to have some of the people right here in our presence. Artists have often served as moral beacons.
We're actually taking the front page of the newspaper, the Imperial newspaper, saying officers hurl back aliens. So you'll see some of this practice applied across various sites and in various types of communities.
I'm speaking as a poet here. I don't write poems because I already know what I'm going to say. I start writing a poem in order to find out what I'm going to say. And sometimes I look at the result and I think, oh my God. So that is what I really felt about the situation.
In the facilitator training, basically what Donald and I set out to do is to take the facilitators through the process we were going to ask them to go through with the participants in their groups, which was very challenging to do in the short time we had. In the facilitator training, a day was a week in the project. So on the first day of facilitator training, everybody did self-presentations about themselves and their work. Its purpose is to have everybody become acquainted with each other's work and get a sense of who is in there. Then that took a week in the actual process of the project. How are these done? These are printed and collage?
You're satisfied with?
Then we did reading discussions and discussions of the lectures.
That says,
You know, can't we just move on? Do we have to keep reading this stuff? Why do these have to be on the syllabi? You know, I'm tired of it.
Dan bell hooks, maybe there's reasons other than the language that is causing this resistance.
I've always wrestled being a white male. I saw him as a feminist and no one understood what I was talking about. And so I ended up feeling very disconnected from all the kind of traditional people that I was around.
I mean, when people say they don't get it, that can mean they don't want to get it.
The question often arises, why do research, especially from artists who have not done it before. And my favorite was when we were in Kentucky, Donald and I, and one of the students asked this question, why do research? We want to be original. And I laughed and I said, the fastest way not to be original is not to know what people before you have done. Then you are assured of reinventing the wheel.
I would say, what artists did we see in the panels or the lecture series, but particularly the 2 weekends, that addressed any of these issues raised here?
We moved then into looking for content, how to take the information that had been gathered through the research and the readings and the lecture and discussions into an informed way of approaching the subject matter. And that was when we did some amount of visualization. And then once people began to identify what content they might want to work with, then comes the art making stage and the process opens up. You know, because people come one day with one idea and then they hear other people's ideas and then they go home and the next day they might have a whole different idea and, you know, then there might be people who want to work together to come up with plans and, I mean, that process, you'll see it.
And our goal really for the end of the third week, that content search, is to move towards a place where we can start working.
Yeah. The step from content search to art making is probably the most complicated step in the process.
With a couple of these people, it's important to be, compassionate, but to really, kind of lay down the law about, let's try to find out what your best ideas are. And now you really have to do this. You can't switch at this point. You have to make a commitment. And, there's one participant that I've been talking to week after week about this idea. And other people were saying, oh, I really like that other idea. What about, the idea that you had about doing this? And I was like, no.
And it requires the facilitator shift the way they're operating from being empowering and supportive to also being directive and offering guidance to help each participant locate on what would be best for them to pursue, what path would be best for them to pursue.
First, when we started, we didn't really know that much about each other, and going through the process, people's work and their progress, and it's like everybody in the group, like I've seen, like from seeing their portfolio the first day, including myself, it's like all of us have just progressed so much.
I think we could like spend time doing sketches.
Yeah. Look more carefully with the materials that these objects are made out of. Or is it impossible to tell? Even if you want to pick it up, smell it, feel it, try to guess.
What makes a tall structure a totem pole as opposed to just a tall phallic structure?
Right.
What is it about the design, the orientation?
Storytelling.
Okay.
The last time we met, she asked me what tribe I was from because she thought I was Native American, which is why I felt so connected to a totem pole. And I told her I'm not, I'm Italian. So that was kind of bizarre, but that's how I got on the subject of researching it, was because I needed to find out for myself what exactly totem poles meant to certain tribes and how they're represented in certain tribes. And I started researching the internet and encyclopedias, and it was very interesting. So that's how I came about with my totem pole.
I had this idea of making the room into a chapel, and I'm going to show the future religious figure. They're all going to be juxtaposed, like Jesus' head on Buddha's body, and just incorporate all the religions, mix them together.
Are they all guys?
No, some of them are girls. Globalization of the religions is gonna make a religious figure change their original identity. You could have a brown Jesus or black Jesus.
Well, that's already happening. Are you working in the concept of the whole installation, of the whole group's installation? it either seems like it has to be the chapel of the future, or else it has to be that they found, again, these archaeological digs where they found all these religious sections, parts of deities, and they put them all together in this bizarre way, thinking that this was what had happened.
How they interpreted what they found.
How they interpreted what they found.
I like that.
Well, then it would give you a sort of, didactic, a basis for, the didactics that you have, just like everybody else has,
It was more difficult for us, I think, because we were dealing with, we took a long time to develop what our actual concepts were going to be. We came up with this umbrella subject of multiculturalism, and because we have probably the most diverse cultural group in with gender and culture and race involved, we have just virtually everything can be offered.
What is art necessarily going to look like in the future on the screen? And is everything going to be sticking to the representational images? Is there an abstract form of art? There's a lack of life in it, and this was the emotions that were expressed out of that. And I'm really interested to see what you guys feel. What direction do we move from here as far as content goes? I want to get stuff across to people, but I don't want it to be glanced after 10 minutes.
There's a gem of an idea in here.
And so Donald, in his view, felt that was the best way to go.
I'm trying to get you
Okay, I
to
gotta
take
figure out my
take this
presentation.
energy that you have. It's the same sort of thing I said here in terms of take these ideas and sort of run with them and see have some fun. Bring the passion into the art. Don't be afraid of the power that it has.
The ideas I had were very, very happy, very idealistic, and there'll be a wonderful, beautiful, magnificent piece, and everyone will be singing and dancing and happy and laughing together. And the more that I talked with my group, and the more critique, review, discussions we went through, it was clear that I had a real deep underlying fear of other future possibilities. And because we're working with Judy Chicago, she is very skilled at discovering those other kind of underlying kinds of content and basically pulling them out, so that now I'll have a portrayal that may be darker initially than I had intended.
This is a gene, this is a cell.
What are you going to do with all that?
I'm going to incorporate them into the background so that it's part of the image. It's the decorative part of the
The work is to make this work, not to come up with some other idea. Walk. Walk in a straight line. Don't go this way. Don't go this way. Just put one foot in front of another. And when you finish, when you get all the way to the end of the path and you've completed the work, then you can see if you want to go down another path. But don't go down another path in the middle of going down the path you have committed to.
Let's see where you are with your sketches and your content search. Okay?
The doll is excellent, but I don't know if you read it before.
Contemplating life.
Exactly. And the Taoism is in line with that. So this is one that I'm reading.
Somebody doing a lot of research. Check this out. Isn't this lovely? It's a little Indonesian girl with these giant chess pieces that they make, well, in Indonesia,
right.
Which actually they show the village of the people who make these, and to be honest, it doesn't look that great. So it's probably part of this political unrest in Indonesia right now. It's like a sweatshop where they make giant chess pieces. Our main character is going to, once it's still it, non-gendered pawns, I promise.
It's not an issue so much about gender, whether it's a he or a she or male or female.
Right.
What's at issue here is the struggle to throw over the rule of patriarchy, which is this rule of imposing order, fighting, power, might, and control and power.
All of the groups have had their own particular challenges, but the installation group has not had a facilitator throughout the course of the project. They had one, and then she had to leave. It seems that coming together without a liaison that interprets back and forth between the group's needs and communicates with me and communicates with Judy has been really an issue.
I'm working a lot too, and I don't want to feel the way I feel when I come to this group. It's totally different from every other group.
We went out to lunch and we went some of us. We beat a lot of hospitals.
Which day did we all get along when we were all Which day? Did somebody not start an argument?
I empathize with them. The nice thing about this project, the collaborative project, is that we're able to come together, sort of dump out all the problems, even if it's a heated conversation, whine about it, come up with some solutions, and then move on.
I became facilitator of the group by default. We met as a group for lunch on Mondays, and then we met with Judy at 3 o'clock. And as a result of those meetings, we talked about being part of the collaborative group, as well as what we were doing on our individual groups. We talked about problems we had and helped each other solve them as a group.
And I think that this is kind of a microcosm of the whole of the project. What this group is faced, other groups are facing, a different kind of problem, but with the same solution. Talk about it, get it out there, fix it, and move on and make art.
So I built a rack with 2x4s in my dining room, and it's clamped on a table, and this is lashed to these poles. I kind of pulled together all these scraps out of the shed in my backyard.
These are moments. These are like, moments if you happen to see them and then you go, oh, boom, there's the lady in the evening gown. I saw her performance last week. What's she doing in the window?
In 15 minutes, she's gone.
And then she's gone. Some of these projects are very traditional per se. Some are built on the character being in the environment, talking to people, having interactions, and that's how those performances get constructed.
Is have a performance in some space, in a window, and have a dozen of these eggs that I make out of ceramic, and you're allowed to open them up as you come by and hear the performance that I'm going to be talking about. And during the story, I discuss the concepts of science, and they kind of go back and forth.
It's going to be a storyboard?
It's going to be a book.
It's the performance, you'll be reading the book?
Right.
Do you do your installation that way, as an egg part?
And stop and tell the stories? That would be a great idea, yes.
We want to address all these issues that we had, that we read in the handouts that we got. The pollution, the problem of the food, the water, all of that, the toxic waste. We try to find the solution for what is going to happen in the future. And there is this huge fear and sense of urgency. We have to take actions, we have to do something. And that's how we come up with those dualities like fear and love, not hate and love, but fear and love.
The foundation for the love structure, the figure that will represent love, and these are extensions. We've been reading a book by Bell Hooks that we really love, where she uses the definition of love is extending oneself. Love is extending oneself for the benefit of one's own or another's spiritual growth.
An old friend of mine, his name is Dexter Frankel. She's a very, very gifted exhibition designer, and she is going to become involved in the project as a sort of exhibition coordinator and facilitator, helping each group format their work in terms of how it will be exhibited, and then helping them actually install and exhibit ready work. Having Dextra involved, helping people bridge that gap and helping them actually think through at the beginning, for example, when they're starting to plan what they want to do, helping them actually have to think about doing it in a particular space and what that means, and how do you actually think about presentation when you're still formulating your ideas. That's all part of professional art practice. And so that will become a very integral part of the project.
I'm just worried about if some of them are a foot tall.
You can have legs, but you can put cloth around it or masonite. You don't know how we're planning on showing your work. Do you want to come over here? This model that you made, Matt, really helps to visualize and place everyone's work. We decided to put it in the middle. So it'll have spotlight. This is where they walk on down to the rest of the gallery, and it'll be like a treasure. Your left-hand person is looking to the right, your right-hand person looking to the left, and the front one is, the middle one is centered, which pulls the eye in.
The future will take care of itself.
Until I see everything, I'm not
Say,
sure.
how about that?
My first professional art project, so I'm afraid of not getting done, of not having enough stuff, of it not looking good, basically everything.
And I like it so much more that it's not trash, that it's computer related.
I mean, what is it you want to propose for the future?
We've got 10 different artists, all with strong ideas, trying to agree. You know, so what we came up with is far from perfect, but we're trying to make it good.
The fact that it changed from something a little more contrasting in the horrificness of suburban sprawl and industry and all that stuff, and it moves to a clean, pristine environment. And that's the thing that if we don't have, we won't have a future.
When we're talking about envisioning a future,
right?
We got to understand that we're going to have to share resources, right? And that we're going to have to be connected one to another.
The Indians that are on the back of the wall where you can't even see them, modernized and up here.
I think they should be in the circle again.
Yeah, in the circle again. Kind of like it's come to full healing in the future.
Maybe there's an opportunity within this space for something that is actually about that spirit.
It's difficult to know where to go, where to stop, how far in the future we're thinking about.
Or to show some positive future of downtown, because people are a little glum about Pomona. People, want to feel like there is a future. That in the future there'll be investment, there'll be growth, there'll be, the positive change will happen, and you'll be able to see them even from a distance.
The most positive thing I can think about Pomona is that somebody in this time has created an art colony. I mean, that's an amazing thing. And
we've drawn from all of those components to create this and see if we've gotten, in fact, the strongest elements. In theory, this should have the best of all of your ideas.
This is the collage of everyone's input.
Okay, I got it. That's the transition where it goes from because for me this whole right side formally doesn't work.
And my original idea was showing the way the future could go if we continue as we do, and then the goddess bequeaths us this vision of the future that is much brighter.
Why don't you use the building for that? Why don't you let the building help you with that? Where this is the bright part and this is the blue part.
I'm just saying that then our vision of the future is only a quarter of the entire wall.
But it might be more powerful, even though it's a smaller space. It may have even more impact.
I see that you're trying to give everybody a space to do their thing in the mural, okay? So, the goddess you've agreed on, 6 elements, okay? And I'd like to see you actually work, once we get the narrative, I'd like to see you work with the big elements.
I'm excited. I've had a really interesting, the last 2-3 weeks, I got my group going. We've done our whole, artist statements and bios. I've met with Barbara and I feel like she's there for us, and how I was in a panic about how would it be represented, and when I look it over, it's wacky and it's eclectic.
Even though Judy and I worked on this project together, we worked with separate groups, and it wasn't until the installations that we got to see the results of all the hard work of the participants and the facilitators.
And so now we want to invite you to enjoy the fruits of the artist's work, the many visions of the future at different sites and different media, performances, events that'll go on for the next 2 months.
I am completely in awe of what's come from the project. Many of the artists have great hope and have wonderful ideas for what we can anticipate in the future, and others have warnings to take heed. I think it's going to be a long time before we have a chance to really digest all of the art and the ripple effect that it's going to have on our lives.
When I was envisioning the future, I just envisioned man starting, middle, and ending, and sort of trying to give it all in one little shot here. The one nice thing about it is I was able to get a lot of friends to pose for me and look crazed. Sheets Miller Gallery was wonderful. They built all this platform for me, and they made it possible so I could have this wonderful exhibition here.
To me, that it represents birth. It represents new life. This is probably my favorite.
That life is reborn with a new child, and there is future through language, whatever that language is, whether it's verbal or body language or whatever kind of language, art, and then into the future.
All of the participants had to make this huge commitment, weekly watching Judy use her dynamic personality to relay what she wanted to with the participants. I hope that I've absorbed some of her style. Our group is so enthusiastic that we're going to continue doing art together and stay together as a group.
I had a class with Matt prior to when this all started, and I sort of watched the change in him and how his whole teaching process has become more open and more interactive with the students.
I have a better dialogue with those students now. I listen to the dialogue more one-on-one. I get in closer, have what I think is more compassion now. And I think I grew personally as an artist immensely through this process.
Personally, in my teaching, I would like to continue some of the points that Judy made about no one is left out of the conversation. Everyone shares. Everyone's important.
Oh, yeah.
Mickey Mouse is watching me, regardless where I go. So he'll keep watching me until I move out of it, and then I'll disappear. And somebody else will come and wonder, where is the camera? No, it's hard because the camera is looking at me.
The reason I think that first image is so interesting is because that the woman who's covered is truly mysterious, whereas the one who is exposed shows you what she's got, and there's nothing sexy about it. Whereas the other one is saying, I have inside, underneath this burqa, all of the mysteries of thousands of years that women have held. And that's why it's just an extraordinary piece of work.
There's a frame shop in town where the framer and I were just having dinner the other night, and she told me she's amazed at the amount of new faces that have come into her shop since this project has been in the works. Not just the artists, but people from all over Southern California that weren't aware of our community before, but now are new friends.
As we envision the future, the more colorful eggs are the eggs that have experienced many things in life, and they're now ready to break loose because there's a soul, a complete soul inside, and it's ready to rise and break into the world to give the world a better world, envisioning the future.
It opens up,
to reveal another egg, which also opens up, and this is what makes it point upward. It's reaching because it has the soul. And in it we have different elements of life. We have mathematical equations, we have different paintings, we have music, we have Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the Magna Carta, and there's the soul painting. It's a lopsided egg.
There was a wonderful group of Sibyls here, all these women that really wanted to come and participate in the future.
We're going to go from the year 2025 to the year 2525, 500 years. At the time you're living, it's called the United States, and California is one of them. Now it's called, our planet is called home, habitat of much energy. These artifacts are actual artifacts from the site of female orgasm from the years 1998 to 2000.
The experience that I'll take with me from Envisioning the Future is how difficult it is to tell an artist or break apart their work so that they're able to grow from it, so that they're able to keep creating.
I haven't known anything about anything I've done, from making this piece of art to having a baby. Explore, experiment, make mistakes, see what happens. Great.
In some way, even though the future can feel so bleak, at least to me, gave it some kind of hope as well in the bleakness. I mean, I think that's incredible. And I also think projects like this here in the Inland Valley are very important. I think that's really important. I hope some way it can continue.
We can change, but for now, this much we know.
There was one public art component to Envisioning the Future, and that's the mural at Thomas and 2nd Street. That will be the legacy that this project leaves, thanks to 9 very talented artists. The project officially ends February the 29th, and I've been giving it a lot of thought, and I believe that we're probably a couple of years out before we really understand the impact that the project has made to us on a personal level, as well as what it's meant to the community.